What is up, YouTube? We are back for our NFL Week 11 prediction podcast, guys. This week's a little different. Not only do we have me and Alex, but we have me, Alex, and my dad this week. And, guys, we had a blast filming this. There were some huge games this week. So, I hope you guys enjoy. Let's get right into the video. So, guys, we are back for Week 11 of the NFL season, coming off a pretty eventful week. Bengals blowing another game to the Ravens. The Jets collapsing again. The Saints, in my opinion, upsetting the Falcons because Younghoe Koo forgot how to hit a field goal. Vikings won, but really struggled. The Broncos almost beat the Chiefs. The Dolphins finally won a game. Alex, what are your takeaways from this past week of football?
Well, there was a lot, and I'm surprised Jets folded like a cheap suit yet again. I think it's very clear that this Jets team is an absolute disaster. Aaron Rodgers, again, I love the guy. Don't get me wrong. The guy should be put away at a state hospital and should just retire. He's done. And they bring in Devontae Adams. They move on from Mike Williams. They fire Saleh. They have the interim head coach, and nothing seems to work for this team. And again, Arizona's a very good team. It's no discredit to Arizona how good they really are, how much of a surprise they've been this year. But the Jets are just an ultimate train wreck. They're done. Just blow it up right now. This season's over. And honestly, it's just so bad that from now here on out, this offseason, there has to be lots of serious questions. Can Rodgers actually still play the game? Do you maybe move on from him? What does the future of his career look like? So there are lots of questions going in after this really horrific season. For the Vikings,
Hey, Alex, one comment on the Jets, if
Sure.
you don't mind. There's one positive thing about the Jets you left out. They always have a way to make Giant fans feel a little better.
That is true, Rob, but the Giants don't get you much hope either.
No, they don't, but
in Germany.
As a Giant fan, the Jets always find a way to even if they have the same record, they always seem to find a way to make it worse.
Yeah, but the Jets actually have a better record this year than the Giants. But anyway, the point is, again, both teams are horrific. The Giants are an absolute train wreck. They fumble in overtime, and the Panthers go on to win that game. That was just classic Daniel Jones and classic Giants. But the Vikings had a horrific week, despite them winning. Sam Darnold looked so bad, it reminded me of his days in New York with the Jets. He had 3 red zone picks, and I was watching a good portion of the game. I was with some friends watching the game, and I saw the last 2 picks. Those last 2 picks were completely horrific. The first one took a funny bounce, deflected off his receiver, and Jacksonville got it. Okay, very fortunate bounce. Those last 2 picks, he could have thrown the ball to Tarzan at that point. It was just going nowhere. It was a horrific throw both times. And the third one, he completely underthrows Justin Jefferson. It was an easy layup pick for the Jags to seal it, and yet the Jaguars still lose the game. That just shows the incompetence of Jacksonville. But for the Vikings, it was a horrible game. The reason why they won the game was their kicker, not Will Reichert, because he's hurt. They signed a guy. His name is John Parker Romo. Yeah. He had never played an NFL game in his career before he played on Sunday. He scored all 12 points off 4 made field goals.
Oh, he crapped out. Yeah. You just crapped.
Hey, Alex, we're losing you.
Yeah. We haven't heard anything. We haven't heard anything since the all 12 points scored. And it's got you frozen with a really idiotic face right now too. But
was he talking about the kicker for Minnesota?
Minnesota, right? Yes, yeah.
It's true though. They as a guy who had has a share of Jefferson, it's been a little disappointing how they've played the last couple of weeks on offense. So it'll be
Looks
interesting to
like
see
you're
if they can
back
turn
now.
it
I could
around.
see you actually moving now, Alex.
Well, Jason, welcome to the Boondocks. That's all I'll tell you. Anyway, what I was saying before I got cut off by Zoom, classic, is that yeah, John Parker Romo made all 12 of those points in his first career game. That's how they won that game against a Jaguars team that we said, should have given up at least 30 points
Yeah.
to this Vikings offense.
It's
So it was
unacceptable for
just
the Vikings to not get in the end zone against that team.
Oh, it is. It is. But the reason why they won the game was simply because of Jacksonville. You're not going to win that way versus Detroit. You're not going to win that way versus Washington. You're not going to win that way versus Arizona. Even a banged up San Francisco team, you're not going to beat like that. Even
Yeah.
though they beat them earlier in the season. Regardless, let's say it's a Vikings 49ers playoff game and this, debacle happens again. You're not going to win versus San Francisco in the
Yep.
postseason. Let's say the game is in San Francisco for, argument's sake. So it's a game where they got to win. It was ugly, but a lot has to turn around. And I think for this Vikings team, that's going to be the emphasis going into their week matchup where they're playing Tennessee. So they get back-to-back games against two of the worst teams in football and the bottom two teams in that horrific AFC South division. So if they do this 2 weeks in a row, then I think there's severe questions for this team regardless of a hypothetical 8-2 record.
Yep.
So, the Jets crapped out. The Vikings crapped out and still somehow won. I mean, the Giants we talked about earlier. I mean, Daniel Jones has to go. And honestly, that might be the last time we see him. I wouldn't be shocked if they bench him and they play Tommy DeVito or, Danny DeVito or Joe Blow or whoever.
Danny
I mean,
DeVito, nice.
Yeah, well, look, Louis
Anyone's
DePalma,
better.
Louis DePalma can throw more touchdowns right now than Daniel Jones. That's how bad Daniel Jones has been. So
Yep.
for the Giants, it just continues to get worse. And then on top of that, really to round out the game, the week last week, those last two games were very, very telling.
Yep.
The Detroit Lions down 16 points at halftime.
Yep.
They scored 19 unanswered points to win that game, and that included the walk-off field goal. So the Lions, in my mind, regardless of the injuries, regardless of Goff throwing 5 picks, regardless of the challenges they've had, they're the best team in the NFC. They're the best team in football, not named the Kansas City Chiefs. So
Yep.
if we really look at this Detroit team, they are the team to beat in the National Football Conference. And they prove that down 16 points. And even when Jared Goff completely craps the bed, they find a way to win.
Yep.
And
What was impressive about that game
Yeah.
Was their defense has been suspect, and then their defense is obviously their offense scored the points, but what you said, they didn't give up any points in the second half, and that was huge.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it was. And then that stands out about how legit Detroit is this year. And then one more thing, that Monday night game. Now the Dolphins come in on a 3-game losing skid. The Rams really should have won that game.
Yeah.
Tua played well enough to get them over the hump. Yeah, he had a pick, but he had a touchdown of more than 200 yards. So I look at this Dolphins team. Maybe there's a glimmer of hope. Maybe there's not. But the way they're able to really shut up LA and shut them down in their own stadium, that's a telling win for a Dolphins team that has had an abysmal season because of Tua's injury.
Yep.
Tua finally wins a game since coming back from the injury. The Dolphins win a game for the first time since coming back from the injury, and it's a big win that has somewhat saved their season for now. We'll see where it goes, but the Rams can't afford to lose a game like that.
Yeah.
And because of that loss, now they're out of first between San Fran and the Cardinals of Arizona, and now they're battling with Seattle. They're both 4-5.
Yep.
So the NFC West gets more intriguing as the Niners and Cardinals win, the Rams lose. The Seahawks are still somewhat in the mix, but in the AFC East, Buffalo is still that clear favorite, but Miami might have given themselves some type of hope.
The good thing
Maybe
for
not
Miami is
complete hope, but some hope.
they have a very easy schedule coming up. The Dolphins. So.
True. Yeah. And again, this could be the right time for them to build something. Again, the injuries hurt, and their schedule wasn't as great in the first half of the season.
Yep.
That favorable schedule coming up on top of Tua being healthy and just looking great and confident last week,
Yes.
that could get them to a different point this year, and that could turn them around.
Yep. No, 100%. Before we get into the games for the week, there's one more thing I gotta say, and
Sure.
I typically, and this is coming from a fan of the team, I try to not, curse here, say anything on this, podcast, but I'm gonna be as blunt as possible. Fucking fire Zach Taylor. He is a terrible coach. What happened at the end of that game should never have been allowed. They have now blown 2 games against the Ravens that they should have won. There was no reason he should have let that team go for 2, even with Burrow holding up the 2. That should never have happened. Justin Tucker also has not looked like himself this year. Just trust your defense one time to get the stop, and maybe Tucker misses the field goal and you go to overtime. That is just a horrendous freaking way to lose that fucking game. And I hate cursing on this podcast, but as a Bengals fan who's frustrated with the coaching, I really can't not on this.
Well, look, I think lots of people share your frustration, especially those Bengals fans, where they had Baltimore by the ropes twice. Not
Yeah.
once this year, twice. They led Baltimore 2 separate times. They could have beaten Baltimore and swept that season series. Let's say they won those games. Honestly, not it doesn't just change their season
Yeah.
around. If we're looking at, tie-breaking scenarios at the end of the regular season, if the Bengals were on a stretch of winning more on top of these 2 wins, hypothetically, then that could have knocked Baltimore not just out of first place in the division, but out of the playoffs potentially, period.
Yeah.
Because Pittsburgh it had a great win this weekend versus Washington, and they're a team that's also hanging in there. So it is self-inflicted. And part of it's Taylor, sure. But I think if we really look at the nuts and bolts of this defense, whether it's Justin Tucker having a bad year or not, this defense couldn't stop a ham sandwich. That's how bad this Bengals defense is.
Yeah.
So, their defense doesn't really help them to begin with, and I kind of see why Taylor had the gutsy move. But I think you made a valid point where this is now twice this has happened. Whether it's been Burrow's mistake or Taylor's bad play calling, that has cost them the game. And honestly, part of it is Burrow too, because Burrow wanted to go for 2 points. And of course, last time he threw the pick, which forced overtime, and Baltimore won. But also, now that I think about it, you kind of see their point because they knew what happened last time when they played the Ravens in overtime. It didn't go well. They probably tried to avoid that, but yet again, avoiding it hurt them more.
Yeah.
And Jason, one more thing on that. I just found a really intriguing stat this week. In the 2 games that the Ravens and the Bengals have played this year, both Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson have combined for 17 touchdown passes, only 1 interception. The 1 pick was Burrow's in that first loss to Baltimore, and they've combined for over 1,500 passing yards. So they've been offensive shootout games, but Burrow and Jackson have balled out combined in those 2 really good games that Baltimore has caught breaks in.
Yep.
Well, that Ravens defense isn't much better. Right?
Yeah,
right?
it's
I mean,
no.
look at the total points in the AFC. In the AFC conference, it's the Jaguars have given up 264 points, and then the Bengals at 262, and the Ravens at 253. So they're that's why they're good offensive teams. You put them together, you're going to get exactly what you said, right?
Yeah.
That shootout. So.
Yep. No, 100%. But for time, let's move into the games because there are 14 games to cover. The first game is Thursday Night Football. Obviously, we got the Commanders, Eagles. Alex, what do you got first?
Well, look, this will be a big game for both teams, obviously, because the Giants are the Giants, and the Cowboys are officially screwed because Dak Prescott's done for the year now. So the Cowboys have had a just overall downward spiral season, and I think their season basically is, basically wrapped up because of Dak being done for the year. He just had surgery this week for his, torn hamstring. So this is going to be something where the Commanders need to take advantage of the circumstances. They're a team that is shocking everybody. Jayden Daniels has had a masterclass first year in the NFL. They're the team to beat right now in the NFC East. Philadelphia is a decent team. The record says a lot more than what they really are. A lot of their offense has been good, but also keep in mind their star players have been hurt a lot.
Yep.
And when they're injured and hurt, that's when they've struggled. Also keep in mind, when they beat the Cowboys who were banged up already without Dak. Even in their last win before that to Jacksonville, they almost blew that game.
I know.
So the Eagles are winning games at very frightening paces. They're winning games in not the most impressive ways. Washington, on the other hand, yeah, they lost to Pittsburgh, but Pittsburgh gave them a really good run for the money. A team that is also fighting for their playoff lives, a team where one week we're saying, okay, they're not as serious, but I think they proved themselves last week, the Steelers. They proved themselves as a team who could really compete with some of the top teams like a Washington and
Yeah.
some others.
Yep.
But for the Commanders, it's going to go one of two ways. It's either they win this game in a close matchup, or I think just frankly, Washington goes in there, takes care of business, and Philadelphia gets blown out. So I'm going with the Commanders regardless this week because of how much of a better team they are. But on top of the fact, if the Eagles lose this game, they lose this game in two ways because the Commanders are that good and because the Eagles are just that incompetent.
Yeah.
And what I mean by incompetent is because of Nick Sirianni is one of the dumbest head coaches right now in the National Football League. If you think Zach Taylor is bad, Jason, Nick Sirianni couldn't call a play call right for celery on a stick. That's how bad this guy is. So the fact that he still has a job is bad itself.
Yeah.
And the Eagles are a team that has a nice record, but if you look at the whole meat and potatoes of their season, they're not that impressive. They could honestly be as similar as last year, where they started 10-1, lost 5 of 6 to end the season, and then the first round of the playoffs they got blown out.
Yep.
If Philadelphia makes the playoffs as a wild card again, which I think could happen because of how weak this division is and how much I think the Commanders are better, I think Philadelphia could have a similar result if they make the playoffs, where whoever they play in round 1 of the postseason, they're going to get torched, and that will be it. So give me Washington, and honestly, I think they're going to torch Sirianni and make him look more of a clown than he is already. He is an absolute clown. He has to go.
Yeah.
And that's going to be proven further on Thursday night.
I agree. Dad, what are your thoughts for this game?
I do think it's a defining game for the Commanders. I think if the Commanders win this game, it's kind of a passing of the torch of the NFC East to the Commanders, which is shocking how quickly that could happen.
Yeah.
Given what's happened to Dallas and where the Eagles are. My only caveat here is I think what you've seen from Hurts the last few weeks is he's starting to carry that team. In the early part of the season, Hurts looked like he did when he was a rookie. He didn't have the confidence in his eyes, but I'm seeing that again back in his eyes and his plan. I don't know if he was still hurt with the ankle or something else, shoulder, whatever it might have been, but he looks really good all of a sudden. So if that continues, and with Barkley, I would not be shocked if the Commanders win, but I think I'm gonna lean on the Eagles winning a close one.
Well, look, I mean, Saquon's a guy who has been a game changer. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he's been unbelievable in this year with Philadelphia. But if we also look at the teams that the Eagles have beaten, whether it be in a blowout or close, Giants, Cowboys, Jaguars,
100% right. You're 100% right.
I mean, the Saints. The Saints were a team that were 2-0 and they lost 7 straight. So they're a team where again they have these narrow wins against bad teams, and then they blow out teams who are just struggling. You put that up against a legit squad, against a team that has surprised everybody. And honestly, Jaden Daniels has pulled the CJ Stroud of 2024.
He has.
So you put those things into perspective, and I think if we look at reality, I think Washington should win this game, whether it's close or a blowout.
Yeah. I'm gonna be honest, it's cutting you off, so I don't know.
What I'm saying is that again, Washington's just the just the stronger team.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I'm sorry, Jay. What are you saying?
No, I was like, I didn't know if he was still going. I was about to start what I was saying because he was freezing for me. I don't know if he was for you.
Oh, no, he was fine. He was
for me, he was.
Okay, no, I was just saying, I agree wholeheartedly. Look, at the end of the day on this game, and we can let Jason go, I would say, I think I would not be shocked if the Commanders win it. I just have a feeling that Hurts is picking up his game, and he's a difference maker. So we'll see.
Sure.
I'm gonna go with the Commanders, to be honest. Look, they've been obviously we all said that the Eagles are definitely playing a lot better, but I am just more impressed with this Commanders team. First off, it's incredible to see how a good quarterback has finally unlocked a guy like Terry McLaurin. He is having a great season. And we never got to see that because he has not had a good quarterback in probably ever throughout his tenure with that team. So now that he's got a good quarterback, his full talents have been unleashed. Brian Robinson Jr. is back this week. That's huge for them. Eckler's been doing well.
Is he definitely back?
I'm saying if. It's hard to say since it's still Wednesday. That's well, actually, we might know in the next couple
It's tomorrow,
hours to
so
the
it's a short
morning.
week.
Yeah. So I don't know. We might find out soon. I could see if
All right.
ESPN has said anything,
Well,
but
that's one, you know.
actually, yes, Brian Robinson Jr. is playing. So yes. But look, I know like a guy like Devontae Smith, I believe is still a little banged up. I don't, I just overall I'm a little more confident in the Commanders team, but I feel like it is easily a game that could go either way, especially with these two quarterbacks.
All right. So you guys
But
are on the Commanders, I'm the Eagles.
yeah, but we move into the 1 o'clock window. Start of the Dolphins' easiest schedule. We got the Dolphins home against the Raiders. Alex, what do you got here?
I mean, look, it's bad enough the New Orleans Saints are 2-7 or now 3-7. Before last week, both the Raiders and the Saints were each 2-7.
Yep.
The Raiders are an absolute disaster. And honestly, Devontae Adams left one disaster to go to another train wreck. So if Miami finds a way to lose this game, they deserve whatever comes to them going forward, especially losing. Because you can't afford to have a great win like you did last week versus Los Angeles, the Rams, and then you're back at home against the Raiders. That's a gift to get you back in the playoff conversation. Yep. On top of the fact, and again, it might be a long shot, but you never know, that gets you some steam slowly back in the divisional race. Because let's not forget, last season, the Dolphins had at least a 4-game lead over Buffalo for first place in the AFC East. Last game of the regular season, Buffalo beats Miami. They win the division.
Yep.
So the Dolphins maybe could pull a reverse card this year. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it could happen. You never know.
Well, I will say, and we'll get to their game later in the week, but this is the perfect start to it because I don't know if you're familiar with the games this week. But obviously, like I said, when we get there, we'll talk about it. But the Bills got the Chiefs this week.
And again, that could be a gift for Miami right there, playing a really bad Las Vegas Raiders team. So if we look at this game, it has to be Miami.
Yes.
And I'm going with the Dolphins because Tua looked really good last Monday night. He looked more confident. He looked more composed. He looked somewhat more healthy. I mean, again, he's still battling the injury, as you can tell.
Yeah, I was like, oh my god, did you see the point in the game where he tried to tackle and he dropped down and then he got kneed in the head? I was like, what is he doing? He literally tried to tackle a guy. I was so shocked by that.
And look, there are decisions that he's made since coming back that are questionable. Maybe there's still some effects, but the point is that you don't just recover from a concussion like that, especially your third in 5 years. On top of the fact, this is a guy who has been able to just really turn things around quickly in that win. And for Tyreek Hill, he's going to be a difference maker. He's had a very disappointing year, mainly because of the injury, because of Tua, but also the sense of, like, this is the great opportunity. This is the perfect game for Tyreek to get more involved, for Jalen Waddle to get involved, for the Dolphins to just simply put up points.
Yep.
This is the game to rebuild their chemistry against a horrific Raiders team who fired their offensive coordinator, who fired 2 other offensive coaches. Their defense is a disaster. Rob mentioned before, they have allowed one of the, I think the second or third most points in football, if not the first most points in football. He mentioned it before.
You mean the Raiders?
Yes.
Yeah, they're 2 points against 251. Actually, the Bengals are 262, like we were talking about, and then Jaguars are 264.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So the Ravens are 253. Now again, you got to look at strength of schedule, right? But
right.
But
But the thing is, I mean, this is a gift for Miami. If they find a way to blow this, then they deserve whatever nonsense or difficulty or losing comes following it, if that's the case. But I think they'll win because the Raiders are just apathetic.
Yeah. Dad, what are your thoughts on this one? I feel
There's
like
no
this.
reason to waste time on it. It's the Dolphins.
He doesn't have anything. Yeah, look, this, as you said, this is a gift game for the Dolphins. They have to win this. If they lose this game, I'd say it's the nail in the coffin to their season,
I, I, I,
actually.
I will say this though. I think Tua will. As long as he stays healthy, I think the Dolphins will have a strong finish to the season. I really do. I mean, you can see the importance he is to that team, just from the difference in play. So
Yeah.
they'll have a strong end of the season, I think, and they may, whether they make the playoffs or not, I don't know, but they may have a pretty big upset in
Yeah.
them to screw somebody else out of the playoffs
Yeah.
from a
Well,
positioning.
the thing is, if they win this game, it'd be 2 consecutive wins.
Yeah,
They would improve to 4-6
Yeah.
if they can beat Las Vegas, which
yeah,
makes them, of course, 2 games below
And
500.
correct me if I'm wrong. The Rams were well below 500 last year, and they went on a tear to suddenly make the playoffs. It's possible.
Yes,
yeah, yeah,
yes, they did, and yeah, they got hot at the right time, and they shocked some teams, and they got in there as a 6 seed,
yeah.
And this year was a bad start, and they got banged up with injuries and what have you. And despite Monday's loss to Miami, ironically, the Rams have been able to also get themselves back in the playoff conversation this year after a 0-2 start because of the injuries.
Yeah.
So, again, they have been able to turn their season around. Like the Dolphins are trying to do the same, and yeah, I mean, like we've said, I think that will happen versus Las Vegas this week.
Yep. No, 100%. But yeah, Tua being back, it just looks like a different team, especially with him getting his confidence back. I mean, anybody's better than Tim Boyle. I might be able to do better than Tim Boyle, to be totally honest. I saw his player. Did you see, by the way, before we move on to the next game, there was his college stats, and he only threw one touchdown in college. Did you know that?
I didn't know that, nor do I care to know that. I don't care about Tim Boyle.
Yeah.
And and Jason, you're a great guy, but the fact that you can play better than Tim Boyle doesn't really say much, to be honest.
Yeah, all right. But let's move on. Are you ready for another crappy game here, Alex? This is
Do I have to blow my brains out?
You're gonna want to when you hear this. We got the Cleveland Browns coming off their bye. Cleveland's just saying.
All right, that's bad enough.
Cleveland fans are just saying, "Can we stay on bye because at least they don't lose that week?" But we got the Browns against the Saints. What do you got?
Oh my goodness. I mean, again, there's a reason why the Cleveland Browns are the Browns, with their color being brown. And there's a reason why medicine sometimes could look yellow, because once you take your medicine, you're going to shit yourself watching this game. So, I mean, this is going to be a disaster. This is going to be an absolute disaster. I mean, somehow the Saints beat Atlanta because the Falcons always choke like dogs somehow, regardless of how they find ways to do it. But I mean, Jason, again, I don't want to use the tie scenario, but this is one of these tie scenarios again. Now, guaranteed, I did say the Patriots Titans would be a tie, and the Titans somehow won. So, you know what? Let me just say a tie, and what I really mean is that the Saints are going to win. So I'm saying tie for the record, but really New Orleans is going to win this game somehow.
Yeah, Dad, do you have anything to add into this?
I would agree. I would go with the Saints, and I think, look, as terrible as they are, I think they're home for this game,
Yes,
right?
they are.
If I remember correctly. So I'll go with the Saints at home.
Yeah. Look, just not much to say. It's two crappy teams, and which team will outcrap the other, basically. And I just genuinely think the Browns are just a smidge worse than the Saints, which is a shame because, a few weeks ago we talked about it that when Winston came in that we thought maybe there'll be a little turnaround, but that has went nowhere besides that first week.
Well, the one thing that should be, I guess, noted is that Jameis Winston's going to be playing his old team.
Yes.
He plays his old squad because he was with Tampa and then New Orleans, and now he's with Cleveland because Watson's done.
Yep.
So maybe that makes a difference, but I don't know how much. Probably not much at all.
Yeah. I wish I could say for our sanity we'd move on to a better game, but it does not get much better. We got Joe Flacco, who is looking older by the week out there,
Oh my goodness gracious.
who threw, I want to say, at least 4 picks. There may have been a fifth one in there. Sadly for him, he did not have the same fate as Jared Goff, who won the game with it. Against another old guy, Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. What do you got here? This is going to
Is
be
it is this really the game, the Colts and the
Yes,
Jets?
yes. The two oldest
So,
quarterbacks in the league. Yeah.
uh, I mean, at this point, just bring back George Blanda. I mean, it's just that bad.
Oh.
My gut wants to say the Jets. No. Seriously, my gut wants to say the Jets, and they found a way to shock Houston. They did, but they also blew a gasket again versus the Cardinals.
Yeah.
My gut wants to say the Jets, and I'm going to say the Jets just for the record. But the Jets are so unreliable, I wouldn't trust them to buy me groceries. So, I mean, I mean, again, you can bet on them. You can choose them here. You can think they're going to win. They'll find a way to just blow it. It's not going to be Super Bowl III again. I'll tell you that much here. But, the Colts the Colts aren't as bad, but they're pretty bad. And having Joe Flacco out there is like having a stick. So,
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
wait, Alex, before we move on with this, I'm just curious because look, what Anthony Richardson did a few weeks ago with that laziness and getting tired crap was not good, I can admit it. But don't you kind of think it would be more beneficial to have him out there still playing and trying to improve his game a little or maybe build some confidence rather than have almost 40-year-old Joe Flacco out there who's not looking good?
well, look, here's how I'll respond to that. Richardson might have been quote unquote tired, but I think there's something more. I think he might have some type of injury again. What is it? I have no idea.
Yeah.
Could be a concussion again, could be something upper body, lower body, whatever. I don't know. I think, and again, I could be dead wrong, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong on this, but I think there's something more to it. I think he's injured. I think he's seriously injured in a way where it's really not showing his full potential. And that's because of the two concussions he suffered last year in the first 4 games of the season.
Yeah.
4 years into his rookie campaign, he was done last year. So I think there's something more to it. At the same time, right now, you can have Anthony Richardson, Joe Flacco, or whoever on this Colts roster. Their quarterbacks are just so bad right now, it's not going to make a difference.
Yeah.
So,
No, my point was just a young quarterback development.
Yes.
Makes more sense than have the guy who's probably 2 years from being done.
Yes, that is true. I see where you're coming from. But again, I think he's injured in more ways than we think. I think he's really shaken up here. I don't think it's just because he's fatigued. Maybe it is, but I think there's something more to it that we don't know. At the same time, with that in mind, and knowing how much of a struggle has been for him this year, I just don't see that happening with him going out there, and it kind of doesn't make sense to throw him out there if he is shaken up. At this point, because you're past the trade deadline, because the Colts are a team that has really disappointed, I think you have no choice right now to play Joe Flacco, honestly. Because you can try to shine, Joe Blow off the practice squad or whoever, but I don't think it's going to make a difference for you.
Yeah.
The Jets at least have Aaron Rodgers, whether he's 40 years old or not, whether he's making mistakes or not, whether the Jets are getting their butts kicked or not. So I think when it comes to the quality of the opponent this week, the Jets should win, and I think they're going to win. If they are wrong, if they lose, if the Jets lose somehow, then I think you really have to reevaluate even further than they're going to this offseason.
Yep.
So, give me the Jets. But again, I choose the Jets like I choose my, calories very closely. And sometimes, the calories, if there's too many calories, I will have an issue. If there's too low calories, then I can somewhat get by, but also might have some problems. If I have just the right amount of calories, I can survive the day. The Jets will give you one of 3 options, and there's a good chance you're going to be in the hospital. So, give me the Jets, but I take them very cautiously.
Yep. Dad, what are your thoughts on this one?
I'm going to go with the Jets, and I'll go a little further on this. I think the Jets are cooked, but I think the Jets, like always, they'll find a way to give their fans a little hope. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Rodgers has his best day of the season, and Adams has a 40-yard plus touchdown.
Thank you. I need that after last week
That's
fantasy.
my call for the week.
It's possible. It really is. Honestly, this Colts defense is abysmal, so it's very,
Yeah.
very possible that they could do something big. I would not be shocked to see Rodgers, as he just said, maybe 250, maybe even 300 yards against this Colts defense. If they want to do anything,
It's his
they
best
got to
game.
they got to get guys like Brees Hall going. These guys have been just MIA. And one thing, and we'll talk about that game later when we get to it. But what's so comical is they trade this guy. They trade Mike Williams, who did absolutely nothing there. And then his first game with the Steelers, he scores a touchdown to win the game.
Let alone, I mean, the game-winning touchdown.
Yes, yeah.
And I didn't see the full post in detail, but there's a story out there that Williams made some social media posts really just throwing shade at Rodgers once he, made that winning play. So,
was it like a coming
luckily-
up short remark or something like that? Or something? I think it was.
I think so. Yeah, something along. So you know what? Good for Mike Williams. He escaped hell, and he was able to, find a way to get to a team that is somewhat coming up right now. He stands out in a big way. We'll see what Pittsburgh can do going forward with a guy like Mike Williams there now. But I mean, again, the Jets, they get Adams, they move on from Williams, and they still can't do jack squat.
Yeah,
that's just the classic Jets.
100%. But we move into another game that with how the season started, you would think, okay, I for sure know who the winner is gonna be. But after last week with the Vikings, their struggle against a really, really bad Jacksonville team, I'm a little concerned taking them against a Titans team whose defense is actually not bad. It's significantly better than the Jaguars' defense. They're really one of the better defenses against the run and pass. What do you got here? Vikings Titans.
Well, look, I mean, this could be last week all over again, and if it does, I have lots of friends of mine, who might be in comas next week. So, if they find a way to scratch the surface and just scratch their way across the finish line, it's not going to be a good sign for Sam Darnold's future. At the same time, look, they're playing a Titans team that's really bad, regardless of how promising their defense could be at times. Their offense is horrific. And the Vikings defense, the one positive from last week, the Vikings defense shut down Jacksonville, a horrific offense. They'll do the same to a terrible Tennessee offense.
Yep.
So I think regardless of how well the Vikings offense does, the Vikings are going to win this game. They might have to rely on John Parker Romo for a second straight week. But honestly, after what we saw, I think Darnold's going to be motivated to rebound. I think he's going to be motivated to fix his mistakes. And yeah, they're on the road, so maybe that's a bit of a hindrance. But at the same time, this Vikings team knows how serious they are. They're a team that is contending this year.
Yep.
They're a team that had shocked a lot of people. I don't think they're going to start 5-0 and now be 7-2 and eventually blow their way out of a playoff spot. I just don't see it happening from the Vikings team with how talented they are and with how good of a coach Kevin O'Connell really is. So I think they're going to win. I think it won't be the most flashy game, but I think you'll see slow improvements of the offense. You'll see John Parker Romo further, build his confidence and build his role as this kicker, as, Reichert is out for about a month or so. And I think the Vikings will win this game by at least 7-10 points. So I think we'll see a slight improvement. I don't think we'll see a blowout, but we'll see the Vikings win in some type of fashion that shows a better offensive production than last week.
Yep, I agree. Dad, what are your thoughts with this one?
I like the Vikings. I think for all the things that Karma said, I'd go with
Karma?
the Vikings.
You just called him Karma? Well, we've been calling him that in a long time.
A long time.
Yeah.
It's on your shirt. Isn't that what your jacket says?
Yep, it's on my jacket. So that's probably where you got it from.
Yeah. But yeah, look, I do have a little concern coming off last week just because how could you not after that struggle against the Jaguars? But I just think this Titans offense is so abysmal that I think this Minnesota defense could have one or two scores with whether it's a pick six or something like that in this game.
You would hope.
Yeah, it's I think the defense from Minnesota alone could carry them to this game if for some reason their offense struggled to score. But again, then we've seen the Titans have weeks where they gave up 52 to the Lions, so you never know. The Titans defense could really crap out. It's been seen. But I think the Vikings win this one pretty easily. But I don't think it's going to be a pretty game at all. I really don't. We move in though to the next 1 o'clock game, and it's a game that's important to you, a big division matchup because I know you love when you guys get to kick their asses. We got the Packers, Bears. Um, Everything seems to be going downhill for the Bears. It went, it's been a mess ever since that Hail Mary by Jaden Daniels. Nothing has went right for the Bears. Alex, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah. The Bears continue to choke, and this is a consistent collapse that goes back to the Hail Mary they allowed to lose against Washington. The Packers should feel good coming in this week. They're coming off a bye. Now they lost to Detroit. Detroit clearly is a lot better than Green Bay. Green Bay though is a lot better than Chicago, regardless of the record, what year it is, what's going on. So the Packers should win this game. I hope they do. Jordan Love did not look great against the Lions, but he's had a week plus to rebound and to play a team like Chicago this week. So I think we'll see a lot of offensive production. I think we'll see this defense, grow in strides this week against a really bad Bears team, where they just fired their offensive coordinator. Caleb Williams has been a bad seesaw that one way looks good and the next way he looks really bad. He struggled again this past week against the Bears. Rather versus the Patriots. Honestly, he's beating up the Bears. He's playing himself in more ways than one. So, this is something where it has not gone well for Chicago at all. And this continues to spiral. And the fact that they lost to New England really just further enhances how bad it's gotten for this team. So I think, they're going to struggle. I think the Packers will come out rested, well motivated, in better shape, knowing what the Bears have put themselves through the past couple weeks. And that even though the Packers lost to, the Lions, they were down 24-6. They lost by 10 points in the end of it. They get the week of rest after. Hopefully Jordan Love is fully healthy going in because he's, battling some type of groin injury after having the MCL sprain in week 1. So he has not been, the picture of health this year. But you hope that this is a good bounce back for the Packers, and it's a, get right game where if they win and somehow Tennessee wins at the same time, then there's a battle for second place in the NFC North brewing if Green Bay and Tennessee can both find ways to win this week.
Yep. Before we get to my dad's opinion, I'm just curious. Do you think the Bears' record's different if it's Fields in there?
I think so, because, again, like I've said multiple times, if Justin Fields is still there, he's got DJ Moore, he's got Marvin Harrison Jr., and, he's got a better,
And he would have had Keenan Allen.
Keenan Allen.
Well, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Marvin Harrison Jr., they would have had all three. Because they would have used that first overall pick from Marvin Harrison Jr. if they kept Justin Fields.
Well, again, Chicago's brain dead. Look at the city. It explains a lot with their football team. So, it doesn't, really surprise me how they had this blunder again. And look, they screwed Justin Fields. That's what they get for screwing Justin Fields and buying into the overhype of Caleb Williams. Caleb was good in college, don't get me wrong. He was a great, great player in 2022 when he won the Heisman. But after that, towards the end of his college career, he tailed off a bit. And he's really been a mess this year in his rookie season. Part of it's the Bears as a whole, but part of it is Caleb Williams just looking really bad, especially those couple weeks and the past couple weeks of just torment and losses and pain and misery for Chicago. So the Bears, I think, let's say they were 4-2 with Justin Fields. I don't see them losing that game to Washington, even if it came down to a Hail Mary. They definitely don't lose to New England this past week. Yep. Justin Fields on a 4-2 Chicago Bears team honestly gets them to a 6-win campaign by now. I think so. 6-7 wins. And it makes them a lot more competitive in a division where at one point all 4 teams had winning records or were at least 500.
Well, I remember at one point in the season we were saying this might be the best division in football. We were saying it.
And it still is, I think. Yeah. Even with how bad Chicago has been tailing off recently. But the fact that this team has had all, teams that all have winning records or 500 records before the Bears lost this past Sunday, that says a lot about how strong it was. And if you had Justin Fields there compared to Caleb Williams, Chicago is not just a 500 team. I think they're a 6-win, 7-win team, and they're truly duking it out with Green Bay for third place in this division.
Yeah, I completely agree. Dad, what are your opinions on this? Though obviously you
I
got a
don't think
good.
I don't think the question is who's going to win this game. My real question about the Packers is what's their identity? Are they going to be a hard rushing team with Jacobs, or are they a passing team? And who the hell is their number one wide receiver?
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see how they evolve in that respect.
It's a shame for them, and I'm sorry to cut you up, but it should have been Christian Watson. But yet again, it's just he's had a lot of issues with staying
Yeah, I don't
healthy.
know. It's interesting. They got a lot. They got three or four really good receivers, but I don't think one has stood out as a number one. And I'm not sure, as the season rolls on, it'll be interesting to see if they rely more on Jacobs and grinding out games. I don't know. Alex, what's your thoughts on that? Looking at them, because I don't think they've used Jacobs enough in terms of what he could do for that
Yeah.
team.
No, I mean they haven't. And honestly, if Jordan Love has another lingering injury, whether it's his groin, his knee, whatever it is, they might have to resort to that, Rob. Because if they can't get the offense going, if Jordan is still lingering with a problem of whatever kind, they might have to rely on the old school rushing game. And that's what
Right.
they did at times
Yeah.
with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon when Rodgers was injured or when Rodgers was struggling to connect with his receivers. So they might have to go back to that if Jordan either A, struggles, or B, if he has another somewhat fumbling performance this week. So, I mean, this game really will tell a lot. You're right about what this Packers offense looks like.
Right.
The Packers defense sometimes is hit or miss. There are games where they stand out. There are games when they do fumble. But their front seven's consistently strong. Their secondary has always been kind of weak, and it doesn't help that, Jair Alexander has had a bunch of injuries this year, too. But the main focus for this Packers team is more their offensive production than how much their defense keeps them in games.
And where that offense comes from. That's the key.
Right.
They
Well,
really haven't defined themselves yet.
Yeah. And again, if Love is able to ball out this week, then I think we can slowly see this team being more of an offensive unit when it comes to their passing, at least. If they struggle, if they barely win, but if they decide to use Jacobs more and he's able to stand out, then you could see more of a rushing reliance when it comes to this offense, and that could carry them the rest of this year into a playoff berth. We'll see.
Yep. Look, I'll say this before we move on to the next game. I love Jordan Love. He's actually fun to watch. But man, the one thing holding him back is some of those terrible interceptions he throws. If he could calm that down, he could be a really good quarterback in the league. And I'm not saying he's not, but he could be so much better. And some of those are uh, just bad decisions with some of the balls he throws. Example, the one a few weeks ago that was a pick six off a little toss out of the end zone. You got to do better than that. That throw was really, really bad. I know you're trying to avoid the safety, but that was a bad attempt of trying to avoid the safety, in my opinion.
Well, look, I mean, again, he's a guy, and honestly, when you said that, Jason, it made me think of Brett Favre right away, where Brett Favre was very similar, where he's great, he's flashy, he can win you games, but he can also cost you games with his, gunslinger, gung ho mentality.
Yeah.
And that was the case for many years in Green Bay with Favre. Jordan Love is somewhat similar, not just with the way he throws, the way he plays, his footwork, etc., but when it comes to that gunslinger mentality, it is a bit like Brett Favre that could be too much and costly. And that was the case, especially versus Detroit 2 weeks ago. So, look, I mean, yeah, that has to be tampered down. And part of it comes with the pride where last year he had a great year, had the second most touchdown passes for a quarterback last season.
Yep.
And then he got a massive contract extension to follow it. So part of that comes with that pride of Jordan Love now being the man and having the cash. But you also got to prove it, and you also got to stay healthy, and you also have to grow in maturity. And I'm not saying he hasn't done that, but there have been those prideful, immature plays like that we've talked about with Detroit and in many other circumstances this year that have cost them a game or that have been pretty detrimental.
Yep. No, 100%. I completely agree on that. We move in, though, to one of the games that one of the top two games that I could say could be a blowout for this week. We got the Jacksonville Jaguars. It doesn't matter if it's Mac Jones or Trevor Lawrence. This is gonna be terrible against the Detroit Lions. What do you got here?
Jared Goff can throw 10 interceptions, and Detroit is still going to win the game somehow. I mean, again, the Jaguars are just beyond pathetic. And again, the Vikings had an absolute disaster last week. The fact that they still lost that game in their own building with how bad the Vikings played, they have to go to Detroit. There is no way
Yeah.
they're going to beat Detroit in the Motor City.
Yeah.
So I think Jacksonville, if they have any self-respect, should just forfeit the game, cancel their plane flight, and just say, you know what, we have no chance. We're going to lose. We're an embarrassment. We can let Jared Goff throw 10 picks. We're still not going to win the game.
Yeah.
So if they had any self-respect, they would just say, you know what, I think we're getting sick, and I'm just going to call it a day here. And, let's fire Doug Peterson and move on. That's what they should do. They have a better chance of winning an AEW wrestling championship than they do beating the Lions this week. So Detroit is going to.
I was gonna say I don't know which is going worse for Tony Khan, the Jaguars or AEW, but
honestly, they both
I'd say the
stink.
Jaguars.
I mean, look, even though AEW is a disaster, at least there's fans at the AEW shows, no matter how small.
Actually, you know what's crazy? And I know we're getting off football topic for a second, but they don't even show one side of the arena anymore because that side can never fill fans. AEW. That's how bad it's been.
And it's so bad at Trevor Banks Stadium or whatever it's called now that they can't fit the 1/4 of the stadium itself. So it kind of all adds up. I mean, look, Detroit's gonna clobber them. They're gonna kill them. Jared Goff doesn't have to have a good game. Hopefully, he does do better than what he did this past week. But he doesn't have to be the greatest thing since sliced bread.
No.
He has to have he can have a good game. Maybe one pick, maybe one turnover, but if he has 2 touchdowns and over 200 yards, that's more than enough for them to win this game because the run game is going to stomp all over Jacksonville, and the Lions' defense is going to make Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones, whoever look very silly.
Yep.
So, yeah, Detroit in a heartbeat is going to just ransack the Jaguars.
Yep. Dad, what do you have to add on this? Anything?
Nothing to add.
It's just
let's just move on. The Lions are gonna win.
Yeah. Look, Lions win this one. I wouldn't be shocked if the Lions have one of their 40-point weeks. I really wouldn't.
They put up 52 against Tennessee, Jason. Maybe 52, 55, 60 this week. Who knows?
Yeah. You know who I expect a very big week from? I think Gibbs is going to have a field day with this team. He is really breaking out more and more by the week. He is so fast. That kid is so fun to watch. I think St. Brown also gets himself in the mix more. He's been doing more, but honestly, he definitely hasn't found the end zone like you would expect him to. But that's also because, for some reason, every position player on that team has figured out a way to throw a touchdown, it seems like. It's kind of crazy. Even Montgomery's gotten in the mix with throwing a touchdown. But, absolute steamroll here. We move in, though, to another game. We got 2 games left in the 1 o'clock window. The Rams, who probably are going to come out angry and pissed off after their crappy performance the other night against the Dolphins. And one thing that stands out to me, and I don't know if you saw any of that game, Alex, but there was a point in the game where they were down and Stafford had Kyren Williams wide open in the end zone and did not throw it to him. That would have been a touchdown, and it would have made that last drive very, very interesting. But this Rams team is playing Drake May and the Patriots. What do you got here?
The Rams should win this game. I mean, it's bad enough they lost the way they did to Miami, letting them get back in the playoff mix. If the Patriots win 2 straight somehow against both Chicago and the Rams, the Patriots aren't completely out of it. Now, I don't think they're going to make the postseason, don't get me wrong, but the Patriots aren't completely eliminated if they're able to win 2 straight.
No, because the AFC is really struggling. I think the last team in the AFC playoff mix has 5 wins.
So if the Patriots win, they're at 4-6.
Yeah.
So look, I mean, this is this is a game that could define what direction the Rams go. Now, what I mean by that is that, again, they start 0-2, banged up. They come back in the playoff race. They're in the race for the division. They lose this past week. That sets them back. If they lose this game to New England, I don't know if they can beat any other playoff-worthy team going forward.
Yep.
Now, maybe not, but it really just takes another hit right in the gut where the Patriots, who had a horrific start, I think they were 1-6 to start the season,
Yes.
something
Yeah.
like that. I mean, they've rattled off now, 2 straight wins? Could be 3 straight if they beat Los Angeles.
I believe
So
so.
if they're
Yeah.
able, so if the Patriots win this game, both the Rams and Patriots are 4-6, somewhat in the playoff race. The Patriots have more upside because of the win, but also where they're at. If the Rams lose 2 straight in such a way, A, of course they can't afford it, but B, that takes a massive hit in what is a wide open NFC West.
Yep.
So I think the Rams are going to be mad going in. I think they're going to bounce back. And because of how frustrated they're going to be after losing the way they did, they're going to have this, true spirit going in, this red hot spirit coming in that I think it's going to power them to a win in some type of a big margin. I think they win by 2 touchdowns, honestly, because I look at the way Williams has consistently been a powerhouse. Even though Matthew Stafford had no touchdowns and 1 pick last week, he had nearly 300 passing yards again. So Matthew Stafford is consistently playing well these past few weeks, regardless of win or loss. So I think the Rams are going to find a way to bounce back, to rebound. I think it'll be a very important game, and they're going to know that their season is somewhat that their season somewhat is on the line here. Not completely, but it somewhat is, on the fence, where they decide to keep Stafford, they decide to keep Kupp. Nacua comes healthy back at the right time. They decide to commit to this year's roster and not trade away big pieces like Cooper Kupp.
Yep.
So with that being the case, they still have a belief they can make some type of playoff run. The question is, how are they going to be able to actually, truly execute that? That's going to start this week with the Patriots, and I think they'll do it.
Yep. I 100% agree. Dad, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I like the Rams to win. I think, that's a division where they still have a reason to play, given how tight it is. So I think they're getting healthier. So I think they should win this game easily.
I think I agree. I also think after 2 games of not scoring a touchdown, I think Kyren Williams finds himself back in the end zone this week. I really do. Look, Drake May, honestly, he's been better. He has. I will give him that. Drake May's definitely been better. Not great, but better. He's certainly been better than Caleb Williams has been. But that's not really hard to do. But yeah, just overall, I'm more impressed by far with this Rams team. I just think they, despite the loss last week, I think they're better by a mile. And the Rams, they know they're going in knowing, they could probably only afford one more loss, maybe 2, but and you certainly cannot have one of those losses be to the Patriots. So I think the Rams are gonna come in, like we said, angry, hungry for a win, and honestly, I think it's a multiple touchdown win as well. I really do. But we move in though to the last game of the 1 o'clock window. This is actually a really, really good game, one of the better games of the week, and a very, very big division matchup. We got the Ravens and Steelers. What do you got here, Alex?
So this game, honestly, a few weeks ago, not really taking Pittsburgh seriously. I would have thought Baltimore goes in here, takes care of business. They sort of show how much of a fraud the Steelers really are. But with the way Pittsburgh won last week at the Commanders, this game it really means business. This is a game not just for who has first place in the division, but this is a game where it shows that Pittsburgh is actually a team that can compete in the AFC.
Yep.
Now, Kansas City, of course, is the top dog, and nobody's changed that so far because they're still 9-0 and they're still undefeated, and that's going to be a conversation later in the program, I'm sure. But Pittsburgh's a team where there's some juice to them right now. They're playing good. They're playing confident. They're playing strong. Mike Williams, ironically, has been the great addition for the Steelers that the Jets were hoping for.
Yep.
And it's something where they can ride into this game feeling really good about what has happened. And, Russell Wilson had a shaky start with Pittsburgh, but the past couple weeks and last week, he was able to show his old form and how he can really still throw the ball and still be a solid quarterback in this league. So I think Pittsburgh's going to make it interesting. And Rob has mentioned the Baltimore defense that has struggled this year. That could be the liability somewhat to this game. because it's one thing for the Bengals to have a bad defense on top of their offense trying to keep up, and they make boneheaded plays that we've seen 2 straight weeks now, or 2 straight times rather. But for Pittsburgh, they're a team with a real red hot spirit. They come in feeling really good after their win last week. They took down a team that's probably going to win the NFC East, and for a Pittsburgh team coming in the way they are, Baltimore's going to really see that. And the Ravens narrowly escaped Cincinnati for a second time. And there are games this year for Baltimore where they look really good, they look foolish, they are blowing games, or they're barely winning games in ways where, yeah, they're impressive, but they're not that impressive.
Yep.
Pittsburgh finally impressed last week, and I think they're really going to carry that into this game. And Jason, honestly, I mean, this game is such a coin toss. You could go one way or the other. This is a game where you really have to see what actually happens once the game begins.
Yep.
But based on what I've seen, based on what I saw last week, if it wasn't for the boneheaded play calling of Joe Burrow and Zach Taylor, the Ravens lose last week. But knowing that Pittsburgh won the way they did, and knowing that Baltimore won the way they did too, I'm more confident in Pittsburgh this week. And I feel weird saying it because I'm not the biggest Steelers optimist, but the Pittsburgh Steelers really turned the corner last week with their win. And I think if they're going to continue to turn that corner, I think they're going to be Baltimore. And with how, impressive, unimpressive they've been all year long, they have found ways to win games. And I think when we look at the defensive aspect, the Ravens defense has ironically, uncharacteristically been bad this year. The Steelers, regardless of how good or bad they are, their defense is strong.
Yep.
Their defense is consistent. Their defense keeps games close games. So I think that's going to be the case. And I think Pittsburgh's defense is going to power over Baltimore's in order to sneak out with a win. And that's exactly what they did last week. That's exactly what's going to happen this week.
Yep, I agree. Dad, what are your thoughts?
The AFC North is a lot like the NFC East, right? The Steelers are kind of the Commanders, the Ravens are kind of the Eagles, and the Bengals are kind of the Cowboys, and the Browns and the Giants are where they should be at the bottom of each division.
That's absolutely right.
So, it's kind of an interesting dynamic, I think, and it's the same game this week. I mean, you got the Steelers playing the Ravens, and I think, well, I agree with you. Last week was a big win, but I didn't believe in the Steelers, but I got to tell you, they are starting to impress, and I think this is their opportunity to kind of make a statement. And I think they're going to beat the Ravens. I think they're going to beat the Ravens, the Steelers. I really do. So
yeah,
it's an interesting dynamic when you compare that division to the NFC East, right? It's so much
and that's a great comparison that I didn't think of. That is a very good comparison, but it's a very realistic comparison, obviously.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, you've got those two top teams in these weak divisions duking out for first place, duking it out for their playoff lives, and the other two teams are train wrecks. And the last team in the division, the bottom feeder, is like you said, where they are. They both suck. So
yeah.
No. I mean, it's a great parallel, and the Commanders happen to be playing the Eagles, and of course the Ravens happen to be playing the Steelers.
Exact week. It's
exactly.
Cool.
And these are games for both teams and for all the teams involved that whoever wins, whoever loses, this could be season defining right here.
They are season defining games. They are.
Yep.
I agree with you.
Whether all four teams make the playoffs or not, whether 3 of the 4 teams, 2 of the 4 teams, 1 of the 4 teams makes the playoffs, regardless of what it is, I mean, again, it's a situation where it shows, are they legit enough to compete, or are they a team that just squeaks in and then they can't go farther than the first round?
Yep. Look, for me, I'm going the Steelers just off the defense alone. I do think Lamar Jackson will still have a good week, but look, I wouldn't be shocked if this is a close game. It could very well be a field goal game with Boswell hitting a game-winning field goal. That is a very real possibility.
Or Tucker missing one.
Yeah. No, it's very possible with the way this year's went for Justin Tucker. He just seems kind of washed up this year. He's just not the same kicker. But yeah, I think this is going to be a really, really fun game that the Steelers do pull out only because of their defense. I like Wilson. I like what Wilson's done so far. And one thing I was talking, Frankie was actually over watching the games with us on Sunday. And, me and him were talking about how Well, Russell Wilson's not what he used to be, but compared to Justin Fields, Russell Wilson has actually really unlocked something in why am I blanking on his name? Uh Pickens. He has really unlocked something with George Pickens, and George Pickens looks better than he ever had. He has been doing so much more lately since Wilson took over. So we'll see. I think that will continue this week. I really do. We move in though to the final 5 games. There's 3 games in the 4 o'clock window. This is another, in my opinion, season-defining game here. Another division battle. We got the Seahawks against the 49ers, and one thing I want to say is, I feel like some people thought they were going to just ease McCaffrey back in, but he was in there full force, getting receptions, running the ball a lot. And obviously they ended up winning the game. Obviously, I know George Kittle's a little banged up, but is still probably going to play this week. But Alex, what are your thoughts on this one? Another big game.
Well, it's a big game, and I'm clearly going with San Francisco, not just because San Francisco I think is the better team, but the Seahawks are just like the Falcons. They're bipolar. One week they're great, the next week they're a disaster. Like, you don't know what you're getting week in and week out with Seattle, the same way you feel with Atlanta.
Yeah.
So, with that being the case, and the 49ers having a back and forth year in their right, the fact that McCaffrey's back now is the right time to have him back.
Yep.
And yeah, he was out there, he played good, what have you. He didn't have the greatest game on earth, but he had a good enough game that helped them win that game narrowly. I think the difference here for San Francisco is the confidence of their kicker, Jake Moody, because he shanked a lot of field goals last week, and Deebo Samuel was not very happy with him, as you saw.
Oh yeah, I think he grabbed him, right? I think he grabbed.
Yeah. So I think Jake Moody's bounce back this week is going to be a big key as to how San Francisco wins or maybe loses. But I think the 49ers are a good enough team where after having a tough loss, battling injuries, dealing with adversity, they find ways to rebound. Not just this season, but consistently throughout the past several years. And last season they had injuries and they had a shaky start or what have you, and they went on to the Super Bowl and honestly should have won and lost on a walk-off touchdown to Pat Mahomes in Kansas City. But the 49ers are a team where, again, I think Detroit's the team to beat right now in that conference. But San Francisco, for years, has always been a team, injury-prone or not, that you can never underestimate.
Yep.
And they're a team that always makes it dicey and interesting, not just halfway through a season, but when it matters the most in a season. Yep. So I think San Fran wins the game, not just based on those factors, but let's go back in time to a few weeks ago. San Francisco played in Seattle, won by double digits, blew them out at home. So San Francisco beat them on the road. Why can't San Francisco beat them again at home, even with the injuries? Brock Purdy did not have his full, arsenal of weapons in that win versus Seattle. Yep. But the Niners, I think, put up 30 points in that win. So the way they're able to get the job done against the Seahawks, injury-prone or not, is telling. And it shows how strong of a team they are with the injuries in play. So I think they win, and they win because of the history. They win of who the 49ers are season after season, regardless of the challenges. And also, like I said, Seattle's too inconsistent.
Yep.
You don't know what you're getting. They could give up 40 points. Who knows this week? They gave up 30 last time to San Francisco. They've lost games to teams like the Giants somehow. So Seattle's a team where 1 week they're winning and they're back in the conversation, and the next week you're saying, no, they're frauds.
Yep.
Overall, they're frauds. They're not winning this week.
Yeah. I agree. Dad, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think, look, as the season gets later, I think you'll see the 49ers start to kind of take control of that division, and I think it'll probably start this week with the win against the Seahawks.
Yeah, I mean, look, for me, me and Alex spoke about this last week. We somewhat expect an eventual dip from the Cardinals. I don't know if you still agree on that, Alex. I do feel like at some point that will come.
Well, I mean, honestly, Jason, I'm torn on it because, and again, it was the Jets guarantee, and the Jets, like we said before, are an absolute disaster. But the fact that they're able to just blow them out the way they did by 30 points or so, I mean, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Against a team with Aaron Rodgers, regardless of how bad he's been this year, regardless of how old he is this season. So The Cardinals are a team that, again, have shocked people. They're a team where if they're going to miss the playoffs, I think it comes down to the final week. They're not just going to blow a gasket in week 12 or week
True.
13 or week 14 or even this week. Like, their team, if they're going to lose, they're going to lose on the final hour.
This
on the
week's
final
actually a
play,
bye for the Cardinals. They don't
final
play.
game.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, okay. So then that helps their cause to rest up after a nice win. But like I'm saying, this is going to be a final game, final play moment for Arizona as to whether or not they win that division or even just make the playoffs.
Yep.
So San Francisco still is the team to beat. Don't get me wrong, but Arizona is more of a challenge, not just in ways that we thought, but they're a challenge in a very serious way this year. Where honestly, they could still have a chance at winning this division, even though San Francisco is somewhat the favorite.
Yep. No, I completely agree. For me, look, it's hard with the Seahawks. We don't know the status of Metcalf because he's been banged up. To be honest, me and my dad, we've talked about it a lot. Tyler Lockett, man, should be so much more than he is. It's a shame. It really is because he used to be really good, but now it's like an all or nothing thing. It's
Well,
either
it's Seattle in general. It's
yeah,
all nothing.
yeah,
He's an example of the personality of that team.
yep. No, you're right. You are right. And to be honest, I think they're just really, really going to struggle against this Niners team because Geno Smith is nothing like he was 2 years ago when he, joined that Seahawks team. He was amazing when he first joined that team, but he has really fallen off. We move in though to a second of 3 games in the 4 o'clock window, a game that's kind of important to both teams, especially for the Falcons coming off this, that really, really rough loss to the Saints that they should have won. And actually, technically for both teams, because it's the Broncos coming off a game, that they should have won, and the field goal got blocked. Falcons, Broncos, both teams could really use this win here. What are your thoughts, Alex?
Well, these are two teams yet again where they are just completely dysfunctional. One week they're good and one week they're not. I mean, they're like Seattle, but this game is more on steroids because of how you have both teams involved who are hit or miss. Honestly, the Falcons are a team, yeah, they should have beaten the Saints, but yet again, it's 1 week they're flat and 1 week they're not. Denver should have beaten Kansas City. The Chiefs find a way to, break through in the final hour. They are able to keep their winning streak alive. They're able to still be undefeated, and they're able to just pounce at the right time and turn things around and win in the most dramatic fashion ever. I mean, again, it's something where it's kind of unbearable because there has to be some type of shenanigans involved here. But Denver's a team that, again, they're very similar to Seattle. They're very similar to Atlanta. 1 week they show promise. 2 weeks in a row they blow it. Next week they're back in there. Last week they have a lead and they somehow blow it to Kansas City in Missouri.
Yeah.
I think if we look at the stature of both teams, Atlanta is the better team on paper. Atlanta has more upside. Atlanta is the better team, period. So with those things in mind, I'm going with the Falcons this week because the Broncos are, very unstable like the Falcons are, but I think that Denver is too unstable compared to how unstable the Falcons can be. Because, again, guaranteed Bo Nix has had his moments, but Bo Nix also has just been a disaster at times. It's really been more of like, a once-in-a-while glimpse that Bo does well, but for 95% of his throws this year and his playing time, it's been not great or painful to watch.
Yep.
So regardless of Denver being at home, like that home field advantage has not made a difference in years for them because of just how poor the offense is and can be. And the Falcons are going to go in there, again, mad about a loss to the Saints, but they're going to go in there knowing, hey, if we really want to prove ourselves, we can't have this back and forth seesaw season.
Yep.
We really have to get our act going. And I think this could be the week where maybe it could be that way. Now, we could say that, and then next week, whoever they play, they choke. So, regardless of it, this has to be a must-win game for Atlanta. And every game going forward, I think, has to be a must-win to a certain extent. Because Tampa Bay might be behind them, but Tampa Bay is not completely out of the picture, obviously.
Well, you know what's crazy in Tampa Bay? despite all the injuries, is still actually playing really good football. They're
Yeah,
just barely
yeah,
losing these games, and also 2 of the games they've lost, they've been screwed by the overtime rule, which still
yeah.
needs to be changed, to be totally honest. But after this week, they could have Mike Evans back. They could be like the usual selves again. So who knows? He was expected to be out till week 12, or maybe a little later, but it's very possible he's back next week. So
Yeah,
we'll see.
yeah. And look, and again, I mean, again, this could be something where if the Falcons do blow it, Tampa comes in next week and they feel confident, they feel more active, and let's say Evans is healthy, then that's another weapon for them to use to get back at Tampa Bay, or rather get back at Atlanta, even though Atlanta has the tiebreaker over Tampa.
Yeah.
So, um, again, but I look at the circumstances. I look at who has more to play for, whose season is really more in jeopardy by losing this game. Atlanta's season is way more in jeopardy if they fall short than Denver's season. Denver, I don't think, is a playoff team. They're
They
competitive.
are a
They're
wild
in
card right
games.
now, by the way, as crazy as that.
They might be a wild card right now, but give it time, Jason. I mean, if the Dolphins can pick it up, if some other teams in the AFC can pick it up, then I don't see Denver holding on.
Yeah.
The Falcons have more upside on them than Denver, so give me Atlanta.
Even if Denver makes it, they're losing first game of the playoffs. But
Right. Yeah.
but yeah. Dad, what are your thoughts on this one?
I'm with Atlanta. There's not much. This is not a very exciting game to me. So I just think Atlanta will find a way to win this game. And
Many of these games are not exciting.
no, there's a couple of really big games. I mean, the
Yeah.
ones we've
Oh,
talked
sure.
about. But yeah, and the next one. So
Sure.
I would just simply go with Atlanta here.
Yeah, look, I think Bijan Robinson's been getting going, so that's one positive for Atlanta. They need to figure out whatever's going on with Younghoe Koo, because those field goal misses were just horrendous last week. I mean, they win that game if he hits 2 of them at least.
Well, one was a block, right?
One was a block, but yeah, the other two just not a typical thing you see out of Younghoe Koo.
Yeah.
So that was really rough. But I do think they get going. But again, this is another one of those games. We haven't mentioned this today at all, but this is another one of those games where we almost have to see once the game starts which versions of these teams show up. We didn't say that at all
No.
today, and this is the first time we've actually gotten to say that today.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, that's the case because, again, we don't know what we're getting, obviously, with both squads. But,
Yeah.
again, this is a game where whoever wins, their season in the long run is going to play a factor on whether they make the playoffs or not.
Yeah.
Again, this is not the game of all games this year.
Yeah.
But if Atlanta loses, and let's say they go on some type of, losing skid, and if Evans comes back next week and Tampa gets hot at the right time, then the tiebreaker the Falcons have over the Buccaneers has no value.
Yep.
Potentially. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But if this, trajectory continues, that could start with a loss this week to Denver and Tampa picks up steam, then that tiebreaker advantage does not play a factor.
Yep.
But for Denver, even though they're in a playoff spot right now, I mean, the Dolphins could really pick up steam if they beat the Raiders. There are other teams in the mix that could maybe get hot at the right time, maybe turn things around. So again, you don't know exactly what you're seeing from the AFC. And honestly, if Denver continues to just blow gaskets and they lose games, then it gives more of an opportunity for a team like the Bengals, despite their struggles, to somewhat still be alive.
Yep.
It gives opportunities for, the Ravens, guaranteed they're probably going to be in the playoffs, but to somewhat solidify their spot if Denver continues to slide.
Yep.
So, look, we'll see where it goes, but I think the Falcons should win this game. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they somehow choke like a dog.
It's very possible. We move in though to the last game of the 425 window. We got the Chiefs Bills, one of the games of the week here. What do you got, Alex?
Well, Jason, we know who controls the pen. We know who's going to be shown on television 5,000 times. We know who the golden boy is. And we know that in the fourth quarter, there's going to be a magical defensive stand to end the game.
And in typical Bills Chiefs fashion, somehow a Tyler Bass field goal will magically go wide right.
Yes, of course. Or just get blocked.
Yeah.
Whichever comes first, or both maybe. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, Kansas City's gonna win this game. I mean, regardless of the conspiracy theory, quote unquote, Kansas City's a good team on paper, and they really are. And last year, despite the whole fixing and what have you, their defense is what did it for them. And their defense is what did it for them in the playoffs last year against who? The Buffalo Bills.
Yep.
So, I think their defense is going to make strides. Their defense is going to play a role. And yeah, Mahomes, I think, will play good. I mean, last time out, he was all right. 2 weeks ago, he was great against Tampa Bay in that comeback win in overtime. But for the Chiefs, they're a team of destiny. And they're a team where if they're going to get to 8-0 in dramatic fashion, if they're going to get to 9-0 in dramatic fashion, then of course they have to get to 10-0 in dramatic fashion, and then 11, and then 12, and then 16,
and then the three-peat, and the three-peat,
yeah, a three-peat, 19, 18, whatever. So, I mean, it just has to happen, right? Because they got to have the whole gang there, and Taylor Swift has to be in the in the nice press box booth, or the nice sweet booth she's in, while everyone else is freezing their butt off. Look, I mean, Kansas City's going to win this game. Buffalo's going to make it a fight. This game is always a fight between these two teams. But Buffalo is never able to really duke it out completely where they're able to be on the winning side. That's going to continue because the Golden Boy can never lose to Buffalo. And the Chiefs have to go to 10-0. So give me Kansas City. They're going to win. Their defense is good. Their offense will find a way to do it. And, yeah, we'll have a Bills blender like always, probably.
Yep. Dad, what are your thoughts on this one?
I'm going with the Bills this week.
Wow.
I think the Bills are going to upset them, and they're going to...
Rob, I really hope you're right, because I'm tired of this nonsense.
I think they have struggled. They've been close, but I think this is the week coming off of that euphoric win for Kansas City. I think the Bills at home are going to win this game.
I hope because I am so scared that this 3-peat is happening. I just want to see somebody good.
Bills. I actually think the Bills may beat them in the playoffs this year.
Wow, he's making a bold prediction.
I think the Bills. I actually think the Bills are going to go to the Super Bowl. That's my belief. I think the Bills are going to finally get.
Are they going to lose again?
In the year where you least expected it of them.
They're going to lose again in the Super Bowl.
I'm not going to go there yet. Bills. All right, I'll go there. Bills, Lions, Super Bowl. Lions finally win, and Bills lose again.
I agree with Detroit. I think the Lions are going to make the big game this year, but I mean, the entire cards are in the favor.
No, I think it's a Chiefs Lions Super Bowl. I really
heard it here first. Then
I agree as well.
Bills, Lions win.
Yeah. Look, for me though, this week I got to go the Chiefs just because I know. I have seen too many Bills Chiefs games to know how this goes down. I really have.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And
time could expire, and Mahomes is going to throw a 65-yard touchdown pass to whoever, and it's going to be the most greatest touchdown you're ever going to see in your entire life. It's going to be pandemonium in Kansas City. It's going to be an absolute circus. Buffalo is going to shed a tear. And Taylor Swift is going to shake it off. So, I mean...
Or what's very, very possible is it's a tie game. Pat Mahomes just tries to bomb one because there's very little time left. And somebody on the Bills breathes on him. And there's a roughing the passer call. And they get the 15 yards, kick the field goal, and win.
That too.
Because you can't even breathe near Patrick Mahomes without it being a roughing the passer call. Meanwhile, Joe Burrow and Sam Darnold can't get face mask calls for them. But, it's just how it is.
That game, the bigger question about that game is how is that game not the Sunday night game or the Monday night game of the week?
You'll hear it in a second why. But that should be a really good game. But I got the Chiefs. We move in though to another game. We got the Bengals, another game where they're trying to keep their season alive here. Against, to be totally honest, in my opinion, now that the Steelers are actually playing well, I will officially give this to the Chargers. The most overrated, most mediocre, 6-3 team. I really just don't think the Chargers are that good, but somehow they win games. Bengals, Chargers, what do you got here, Alex? Sunday Night Football.
This is Sunday Night Football?
Yeah.
Yeah, Rob is right. That should have been flipped. I mean, if the game's in California, play a 4:25 Eastern game and have Kansas City and Buffalo on, NBC. what the heck are you doing? So with that in mind, I mean, the Bengals have to find a way to win this game. If they don't, then I think their season completely comes to a close. The Chargers are a team that you said, I mean, they are an overrated 6-3 squad this year. They're not that great. Justin Herbert's good, but the surrounding pieces are either injured, not that impressive,
Or
or
inconsistent.
or just simply inconsistent. And that's the same with their defense. They're injured, inconsistent, or not that impressive. So, yeah, I mean, why is this not the SNF game? And honestly, like they flexed the Vikings game a few weeks ago from a 1:10 Eastern start to a 8:20 start. That was 2 Sundays ago. How do you not flex this to NBC? I
Yeah.
just don't understand.
It's
But
interesting stat on the Chargers. They've given up the fewest points in the league.
Really?
Only 118 points in 9 games. Now again,
wow.
you go by, but that's I mean
That's what
that's
happens when you
11
go to Staley.
11.8. That's 11 almost. Well, what if you said they 10 games? It's like 11, 12 points a game.
Yeah.
12, 13. They're giving up like less than 2
To
touchdowns.
be fair, every one of their games has just been very ugly, low-scoring games. But
Just saying, like I mean, I'm sure it's been a weak schedule. I haven't looked at it. But, you look around the league at teams like the Chiefs, they've given up 161 points.
yeah,
The Steelers 146. I mean, it's pretty interesting. 118
Well,
points after 9
well,
games is.
yeah. Again, I think you look at the matchups. Even though Kansas City's a dominant 9-0, they've played the Ravens. They've played Tampa Bay, who gave them a good run for the money.
yeah.
They've played top quality teams that have put up points,
No, I know, yeah.
even against a really good Chiefs defense. And honestly, I think the Chiefs have the best defense in football, regardless of how many points they've given up or not this season so far.
Yeah.
So, that's telling. I'm not saying it's not. But if we look at the quality of the opponent for the Chargers, it's not the most impressive stat against some of the teams they've played. It's
Yeah.
impressive, but it doesn't, take your breath away. So the thing is, though, the Bengals are a team, regardless of their losses and wins, they put up points. Their defense is atrocious, but they put up 33 points versus Washington. They put up 34 versus Baltimore. They put up a 33 again, or before this 34-point performance against the
I
Ravens
mean,
again.
I'm sorry to cut you up, but we're talking the Chargers. This is their wins. I mean, they held the Raiders week 1 to 10. Week 2, they held the Panthers to 3.
Giants couldn't do that.
Yeah, true. Then they
Well,
held
again, the Giants. What do you expect, Rob?
The Broncos got 16 against them. Then they held the Saints to 8. The Browns to 10. So and the Titans to 17.
They lost to the Chiefs and held them to 17.
Yeah, that is true. But
So anyway, look, I'm not suggesting this. I think the Bengals win this game. The Bengals have to win this game. So
yeah, hopefully for
probably over.
hopefully for the Bengals they got Higgins back because they could really use Higgins back. Huge piece there.
Well, look, I think Cincinnati wins this game too. And look, I'm not trying to say, history is going to repeat itself, but the last time the Bengals were on Sunday Night Football, they beat the Giants. Now, guaranteed it was the Giants, but point being is that they have won historically this year in this type of setting on NBC.
Yep.
So maybe it happens again against a good Chargers team. And honestly, like the Cardinals got hot at the right time off a walk-off field goal. They beat the Chargers 17-15. That win turned their season in the direction they're currently in right now.
Yep.
That could be the case for the Bengals too, even if it's a 17-15, 2017, whatever kind of win. It can be low scoring to a certain extent. I think the Bengals are going to win. And honestly, for a team that, they've had their good moments, but they've also had their bad blunders, like last Thursday against Baltimore. This has to be a wake-up win for Cincinnati. This has to be a turnaround win. This has to be a season-defining win for this team. Because if Denver loses, if other teams in the AFC continue to stink it up, if the Bengals can get hot after beating a Chargers team like this with the good defense they have, guarantee they're playing crummy opponents, if they're able to, win the way they could win, that will be a difference maker regardless of how good this Chargers defense is, because the Chargers defense might keep them in games, but it's the Chargers offense in the biggest moments that can't pull it out.
Yep.
And that's been the case consistently. And their wins have mainly been because of their defensive strongholds.
Which
Not
I never
because of
thought
how
I would say
impressive.
with what their defense used to be.
Oh yeah, last season they were giving up 30 points consistently
Yep.
on defense, and also part of it also is that Brandon Stanley was the coach there. Keep that in mind. The quote unquote defensive specialist. I mean, Brandon Stanley could not prevent a house fire. So I mean, again, this is a guy who is just an absolute clown. But the Chargers are a team where they've seen improvement. They've seen strength on that side of the ball. But now it's the opposite side of the ball that has had their issues to a certain extent.
Yep.
So, no, give me the Bengals.
Higgins practiced today, but limited. So he looks like he's trending in the right direction, Jay.
Usually those Wednesday practices after coming back from an injury, the first one is usually limited, I believe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But again, I think the Bengals win, and they're going to win not in the prettiest fashion, but a fashion where it could turn their season around, just like how the Cardinals won, and that turned their season around.
Yep. No,
I would agree with that.
100%.
I think you got the Bengals here winning.
Yeah. But we move into Monday Night Football to end the week. The Battle of Texas. The Houston Texans versus the Dallas Cowboys. And it's a shame because this game is a game that, the NFL probably looked at that would have been so much bigger and better. But obviously things are out of their control. Dak Prescott injured, and even when he was healthy, they were just a disaster. Anyway, CeeDee Lamb has become such a disaster of a fantasy pick this year, actually. But what are your thoughts on this one, Alex, to close the week?
Well, I'm going with the Texans, not because I think they're going to win, but they have to win this game.
Yeah.
They get embarrassed by the Jets. They choke against the Lions. They can't afford to lose 3 straight.
Yeah.
Let's say the Colts somehow win this week. Let's say the Jets have another train wreck.
Yeah.
And the Texans lose. Then that division in the AFC South is a lot more closer than people thought it would be. Strangely, but that would be the case because what they'd be a game or 2 back of first place.
They would be a game, they'd be a game back.
So the fact that that's the case with old man Joe Flacco, again, who could come to the rescue, despite his 5 picks last week, that could be a difference.
Yeah.
The Texans cannot afford to lose this week. Guaranteed Stroud took the responsibility, and I appreciate and admire that from him. That shows how much he's grown after such a great year last year, just coming out of nowhere. He's had a good year this year. Sure, he's had blunders, but he still has had a good season, and he's really grown as a leader for this team in his second season. But they're playing a Dallas team where Dak is done for the year. CeeDee Lamb can't catch balls in the sun, so thankfully this game's at night. The Dallas defense continues to just be horrific. Micah Parsons makes some strange comments about Mike McCarthy's future. Mike McCarthy for himself couldn't call a play. He can't even call a cheeseburger right.
I do wonder if Micah Parsons is going to be out of there. He still doesn't have a deal.
Well, I mean, he might not be. And then every time we turn around, Jerry Jones is ranting. And you know what? Have Jerry rant. That's fine with me. The more he keeps complaining, one day closer he gets to the nursing home. That's fine with me. So it works out fine for Jerry Jones. The point is that Houston should win this game. I think they're going to. I think they're going to bounce back. Knowing how well they played in the first half, I think they're going to translate that to a full 60 minutes. Last week, that first half against Detroit was excellent. They know how to pressure quarterbacks. They know how to make quarterbacks flustered. Jared Goff threw 5 picks last week. Cooper Rush is nowhere close to as good as Jared Goff. Yep. So knowing the QB battle they're going up against, how much of an easier, opponent it is in that area this upcoming week, the Texans should have no problem containing the Dallas offense. The question is, can Houston put up points consistently where their leads are so big, there's no thought of blowing them?
Yep. No, I completely agree.
And I think we're going to see that because the Eagles, how much of a train wreck it's been for them this year, despite their winning record, they beat Dallas 34-6.
Yep.
Why can't Houston put up 34 points against that same Cowboys team?
Yeah.
The question is, or the answer is they can, obviously. So I think Houston wins in a very comfortable fashion. It'll be a big bounce back for the Texans. I think they're going to win in a very large margin. And if they don't for whatever reason, then there's panic. But I don't think the panic's going to happen because of how chaotic the Cowboys season has been this year
Yep.
and how worse it continues to get now with Dak being done for the season.
Yep, I completely agree. Dad, what do you think for this one?
I think I think Dallas's season is just going to get worse as it goes on, and I think Houston wins this game and shows that they're a competitor and a contender coming after a tough last game. But they lost to the Lions last week, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
after
Until they come back and they
dominating
win.
half.
Yeah.
The one thing, despite the fact that it's Cooper Rush and not Dak Prescott, the one thing that makes this game a little bit more, and I feel like it is always because of it when they do play the Battle of Texas. That is a big thing.
Oh, it is. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I know. It's a big deal. It's going to be awesome in that sense. It's going to be a rowdy game. You'll have both sides of the fans really chirping at each other and really getting into this matchup. It's going to be a fun atmosphere, regardless of the score, regardless of how the teams are doing coming into the game. This is a great rivalry, and trust me, I've been to Texas. I love Texas. You don't mess with Texas. That's
Yeah.
for sure. So it's going to be a great game when it comes to the atmosphere and the overall narrative of this historic matchup. But if we look at the teams coming in, Houston obviously is a lot better. And the Texans are playing more with something to prove and something to actually play off of. The Cowboys are playing with nothing.
Yeah.
They're playing with house money. They're playing for pride because their season is shot. And from here on out, it's more of what can they do to stay somewhat interesting despite them being so interestingly bad,
Yeah.
where Jerry Jones is ranting on Dallas sports radio every single week. So, again, the Texans win. It's a big statement win. It's a big bounce back win for this team, regardless of what happens with the Colts and Jets this week. Houston's not going to let them lose 3 straight, and they're going to bounce back in a way where it's going to get more ugly for the Cowboys this year.
Yep. First off, one thing I would say with how bad the Cowboys are against the run, Joe Mixon is going to continue his amazing season. He has been unreal this year, and
Great fit for them.
yeah,
He's a
this
great
is
fit
come.
for them.
Yeah, 100%. This is
Isn't Nico back this week too?
It should be. Should be.
Yeah.
This is also coming off a year where a lot of people said that Joe Mixon looked like he was done. He really just had a really bad last year with the Bengals. You would know that you had him in fantasy last year. But yeah, he's finally doing something, getting going this year again after a rough year. Obviously on the field, off the field issues, going on throughout last season. But now that everything's, taken care of and he's found a new home, it looks like, honestly, he looks even better than Joe. I was going to say it's the Joe Mixon of old, but he looks even better than he used to when he started with the Bengals. So, I think he has a big game. If Collins is back, he has a big game. I think Tank Dell does too. I think against this Dallas defense, I think they just eat them alive. I really do. I would not be shocked if they have a revenge game, a revenge game, where they bounce back and just dominate. And the poor Cowboys, it's a revenge game.
Oh, it's never poor Cowboys. Never poor Cowboys.
I was gonna say that too. Don't give me this poor Cowboys.
We don't feel bad for the Cowboys, okay?
True. But in this scenario, I get usually a revenge game is a game to get revenge on the team after they beat you the last time. But I guess since it's the Battle of Texas, you could call it a little bit of just a bounce back revenge game, just to piss a little more in the Cowboys cereal. I guess you could say, because that's basically what's happened to them this entire season. But
Good.
yeah, I think Texans win this one pretty easily. To wrap it up, there's some really good games, but there's also some really bad ones. But again, the fun part about this stage of the season is we're at the point where these games really, really matter. They might not be the most exciting games, but they really do matter. And me and my dad always talk about it, Alex, and I think I said it to you the other day. Even those, I swear, a football game could be the biggest pile of dog crap, and somehow 5 games get chaotic at the end of NFL Red Zone when you watch. I swear. It's the weirdest thing. Every week, it does not matter. the Panthers and Giants could have been on a 1 o'clock red zone last week, and somehow the end of that game could have been chaotic. It's just a weird thing when it comes to the 1 o'clock window. So I never count out the bad games for something interesting happening.
Two bad teams could make for a fun game. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Or it could make for a game where it's so bad you want to gouge your eyes out.
Yes.
Yeah, but listen, look at the Carolina Giant game. Even though I'm a Giant fan and it was a terrible ending,
And I'm
that game
sorry to hear that, Rob.
that game was an exciting
Yeah.
game. I mean, the Giants came
No, it
back,
was.
tied it up, went to overtime, but yeah, it's
Yeah. Well, actually,
Anyway.
you know what's really funny to close this out? Speaking of the Giants, at the beverage distributor I work at now, there's a sign in there. They have a ton of different sports related stuff hung up there. But I had to take a picture of this today before I left because I just love this. There's a sign that the Modelo beers. Um, it says Modelo, brewed for full-time Giants fans. And that's the
That's
sign,
great.
and
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so I loved that, but yeah, I mean we'll see. At this stage of the season, every week is really really interesting, and honestly, you know, any given Sunday, anything could happen, right? Thank you guys so much for watching that Week 11 NFL prediction podcast, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys are new here, drop a sub. If you guys like the video, leave a like. Also, drop a comment below what you guys' prediction for the week, guys. We want to hear what you got to say. Um, you know, this is another big week of football. Some really, really big games. Some big division matchups as well. Then you got the Chiefs, Bills. So we'll see what happens. If you guys want to see the three of us going forward or more often, let me know as well. The three of us had a blast filming this, and I'm sure the three of us would all love to do it again together. But on that note, guys, again, I hope you enjoyed, and we will see you guys next week for week 12. Peace out, and see you guys in the next one. Peace.